Hello, YouTube. Today, I'd like to share my opinion about the game Undisputed, which was just released 2 days ago. I bought the deluxe edition and started playing in early access. Let's start with the positives. The boxer's movements look much more realistic compared to when I played it on PC. So, there are improvements, and they're definitely in the right direction. The game overall feels realistic at times, and it could potentially awaken the entire boxing community, especially since we haven't had anything like this on PlayStation for around 10 years. And this game currently has no competitors. According to the developers, you can play very technically and become a true boxing technician in this game. But is that really the case? The servers are lagging, the connection with other players is just terrible, and hit registration is still unclear to me. For example, you can get hit even when your opponent is in a completely different corner. Since I started playing, almost all players have been spamming punches, spamming power shots. I mean, if the developers claim this is a realistic boxing simulator, how can a boxer run around for 8 rounds throwing power punches non-stop? To me, that's not very realistic. How can a boxer stay on his feet after taking 4 consecutive power shots without even losing health? Every time I try to play calmly and act technically, it all falls apart when I meet someone who doesn't really know how to play, but spams 2 buttons and destroys me. A lot of people are reacting negatively because this is a new game, and many are frustrated with losing due to a sense of unfairness. For example, if you're someone who actually boxes and knows how to fight properly, but you keep getting beaten by spammers, it feels wrong. There are no penalties for missing punches. There's just nothing. Every time you try to use proper technique against spammers, there's always another problem, like connection issues or other bugs in the game. Another issue is when, after a tough fight where you come out as the winner, your opponent can just quit the game and that's it. Boom! You get kicked out, they don't get a loss, and you don't get the win. I remember boxing against Vasily Lomachenko. It was one of my first fights in the game. Honestly, it felt like it wasn't Vasily, but some old drunk guy who just walked out of a store and got dragged into the ring. All the player did was run and throw left hooks. It seemed simple, and I knew how to counter it, but with the pressure and poorly designed angles, he still managed to land shots on me. I won that fight, but despite how basic my opponent was, it wasn't easy. This game has huge potential, but the developers need to put in a lot of work. They need to rebalance things, fix the issue with these ridiculous spammers, and introduce some kind of penalty for missing power punches. Otherwise, this game is going to lose a lot of players. It also feels like dodges and slips don't work properly. Even if you slip a punch, it still somehow lands, and you end up losing a significant amount of health. So, what are we supposed to do? How do you deal with this? When you face a player with a very strong record, you already know that it's just going to be non-stop punch spam and nothing else. If a power punch connects, you get put into a mini stun, and during that time, your opponent can land 2 more power punches, which heavily impacts the rest of the fight. The fight is about to start, you're ready and pumped up, you know exactly how you're going to approach it, and you've got a solid game plan. The countdown is on. You see that your opponent has a record of 11 wins and 4 losses. The fight begins, you're running through all your moves in your head, focusing, and then you see your opponent rushing at you with 0 control, just spamming power punches one after another. You quickly realize this person must be crazy, with drool hanging and eyes crossed. You try to slip punches and counterattack, but because of these bugs, it doesn't work, and bam! You get hit with the first punch. Your opponent doesn't stop and continues what looks like some drunken brawl. At this point, you understand that technique won't work, and he's just going to overwhelm you. Yes, overwhelm you with 2 buttons. Occasionally, you'll land a few punches, but they don't seem to affect his stamina or health. With this playstyle, your opponent will still have more stamina by the 8th round than you. This raging rhino will keep trying to knock you out with power punches for the entire fight. The developers are aware of this issue, and they've promised to address it. Let's see what happens. Because of all this, you lose the motivation to try playing with proper technique, knowing that some donkey is still going to beat you with just 2 buttons. I'm sure most people didn't expect a boxing simulator to be like this. But since this game has no real competition, we're left with no choice but to keep playing and wait for updates from the developers. The game is quite beautiful, and I hope they fix these flaws and issues because as a boxing fan myself, I had been eagerly waiting for this game.